Over the past months, Armenia has been pivoting away from Russia towards Western countries. Yerevan has been searching for new allies ever since it was defeated in the Karabakh war. The country is accusing Moscow of failing to protect it from neighbor and longtime rival Azerbaijan. And now the EU says it's ready to start talks on visa liberalisation for Armenian citizens seeking short visits to the Schengen zone. The announcement was made together with the approval of a military aid package worth more than $10 million, which the bloc has allocated to Yerevan. And earlier this month, Armenia also carried out a 9-day joint military exercise with the US just a month after Yerevan said it would quit the Russia-led CSTO, a military alliance of post-Soviet states. The Russian Foreign Ministry criticized both the drills and the EU's decision, saying these moves could destabilize the South Caucasus. As for Baku, it called the latest developments provocative actions that it says show Armenia's preparation for another war with Azerbaijan. Since Baku regained control of the Karabakh province in September, the two sides have been working towards a peace deal after decades of conflict. And for more on Armenia's shift towards the West, joining me now from Brussels is Samuel Doveri-Weserbey. He is a managing director at the European Neighbourhood Council. And from Baku, Farid Shafiev, chairperson at the Center of Analysis of International Relations. A warm welcome to you both, and thanks for joining me on Straight Talk. So, Samuel, what's the driving force behind this deepening cooperation between Armenia and the United States, as well as the European Union?
Well, I think from the United States perspective, the United States has seen a lot of Russian hybrid influence within the South Caucasus. It's something that Washington sees very negatively, particularly what's happened with regard to the protests and the heavy-handed clampdown by the government in Georgia on people there. And I think the United States also thinks that there is a risk of hybrid attack in Armenia, especially because their government is seen as very pro-West and very pro-EU. And as a result, there has been this kind of military drill, which is not the first one. There was also one last year, but the one this year was essentially a lot of focus on anti-rioting. And so I think based on the actual exercises that they were undergoing, and the fact that the Kansas National Guard was there and that there was a big important peacekeeping element, one can assume safely that the two main concerns was anti-rioting and anything related to hybrid warfare coming from Russia, and of course also the peace process in the region.
So, Farid, EU countries have approved the bloc's first ever military aid package to Armenia. Is this a complementary step to the weapons agreement struck between France and Armenia in October? I mean, did France play any kind of a role in this military aid package?
Well, we see a bit differently what's going on. Yes, and France stepped in to help Armenia militarily. But, from Azerbaijani perspective and from a perspective of international law, Armenia is the country which occupied territory of another country for 30 years in blatant violation of UN Security Council resolutions. So we concerned about this military build-up. And I have a bit of reservation what's going on between Armenia and West, speaking like, term hybrid war from Russia, because Armenia and Russia military allies still, they are member of CSTO. And more on economic terms, they are both member of the same organization, Eurasian Economic Union, and trade is going up between Armenia and Russia, especially in the last 2 years after Russian invasion of Ukraine, which mostly it's the sanctioned goods coming through Armenia. So we cannot speak really about hybrid war from Russia, because Russia and Armenia indeed allies. More we are concerned, I'm finishing on that, my comment, that Armenia, as in a way how in 90s we tried to weaponize Russia against Azerbaijan, we're trying now weaponize the help from the West, or the rapprochement from West, against Azerbaijan.
So, Samuel, what do you think? Why are Western nations interested in modernizing Armenia's aging military?
I think Mr. Shafiev is right about the fact that traditionally Armenia and Russia have been military allies. In recent years, and especially since 2018, we've seen some really important shifts away from that, objectively speaking. I mean, just to take the organization that was mentioned before, the CSTO, I mean, Armenia no longer doesn't pay into this organization, and Pashinyan has gone to the parliament itself and said, we have a frozen relationship with it. And when we look at arm importation from Russia, so weapons importations over the past 5 years, these are not my words, but the words of perhaps the most renowned database on military exportation from Sweden, SIPRI. They show that Russia is not conducting much maintenance, is not selling any arms, and now it's indeed being taken over by France and in part India as well. So there is really a decoupling happening. Within the military, there is still, of course, a relationship. These things don't disappear overnight. But for example, in the intelligence community, the government has made an enormous effort in order to steer away from relations with Russia. I mean, they've essentially closed down the so-called old Armenian intelligence agency and started a new one with other people and so forth. So I would say that there is really a big change happening, and I hope that answers your question.
So, Farid, I mean, would you agree? I mean, would it be easy for Yerevan to decouple itself, actually completely decouple itself from Moscow, especially after last month's announcement that it would quit the Russian-led CSTO? Is this doable?
Yeah, I agree with Samuel in terms that there is now a bit division between Armenia and Russia, and at least some comments from top Armenian government leaders saying that we need to move towards the West. But I'm still cautious about how far Yerevan is going to do that. That's one point. And second, which I made earlier, whether Armenia is doing for the sake of Armenia, let's say internal stability or let's say internal development more precisely, or as I said, Armenia is trying to do that to weaponize or instrumentalize this cooperation with the West against Azerbaijan. I am afraid it's second. And with regard to still the Armenian drive to the West, we should be careful because Pashinyan recently said that depending on the outcome of American elections, and he implied that if Trump is elected, then Russia might might return to the South Caucasus. Well, actually, Russia never left, but the Russian policy in the South Caucasus might be much more assertive. And in this case, Armenia should be careful.
So, Samuel, what kind of a balancing act is Yerevan playing here? And could its new partnerships with the West derail the peace process between Azerbaijan and Armenia?
Well, I think Armenia, like most countries in the South Caucasus, are interested in being part of the energy, security, and economic prosperity of the region, of the potential economic security and prosperity of the region. In order to do that, an important component is, of course, a market buyer or a large union of buyers. In this case, we can put Turkey, we can also put the EU in that category. To some degree, we can also put Russia in there. But increasingly, what we see is that the goods that are purchased from Russia are either trade circumvented, so that will have a limited timeline, let's say, it will not last forever, or number two, energy, which some countries have switched over to Russian gas, like for example China has. But when we look at more of Eurasia, and especially the EU, but also the rest of Eurasia, including the Caucasus, even into Central Asia, what we're seeing is actually a lot of diversification away from gas and also into renewables. So I think that's the question that Armenia is asking itself, along with everyone else along the so-called middle course.
So, Farid, could you talk to us about the latest on Azerbaijan-Armenia normalization efforts? Because Baku said it's ready to sign a full peace deal with Armenia if it amended its constitution to remove an indirect reference to the Karabakh independence. How big of an obstacle is this?
Well, I think it's the big obstacle. If we look at, let's say, European experience, we usually told that we should look at Europe, and there are two cases related to kind of this territorial claims. One is a case of Irish-British Good Friday Accord of 1998. According to that agreement, Ireland pledged and then later conducted referendum to change the constitution. And the second case, it's the North Macedonia, where Macedonia did change the name of the country before signing, a normalization with Greece with regard to the name of the country. So in both cases, now, we've been told that, the Armenian constitution is the internal matter of Armenia. But I'm sorry, anyone who visited Azerbaijan's formerly occupied territory and have seen devastated territories, complete destruction of infrastructure, and the results of ethnic cleansing, for us, it's not internal matter of Armenia. It has direct implications for Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan, indeed, 90% of the peace treaty is agreed upon, but those 10% related to Armenian constitution should really be fixed before we can proceed with the signature.
So, Samuel, a very quick answer for that. A few days ago, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan visited the modernized Margara checkpoint at the Turkey-Armenia border. What's the significance of this?
Well, I think Armenia is very interested in normalization with Turkey. Turkey is an enormous market. Turkey is still part of the customs union of the EU, and it's, of course, a candidate country. Things go hand in hand in that respect. And I think for Armenia, it's very important to have a good relationship to its large neighbor. And I think that's very much at the crux of this.
So, Farid, could there be normalization talks between Turkey and Armenia before Azerbaijan agrees on a peace deal with Armenia?
I mean, conceptually, we're all speaking about future as a peace, regional cooperation, but Azerbaijan still believes that the peace treaty should come first and change of Armenian constitution, because Armenian constitution has also clause not only about Nagorno-Karabakh,
yes,
former Nagorno-Karabakh, but also some Turkish territories. So I think the peace treaty should come first and then normalization. And if we look at the Zurich Protocol and what was happening, the Armenia was not interested in peace progress. They just wanted to sign a separate agreement with Turkey. Yes. So I think in this case, it's the same scenario. So Baku would insist that first peace treaty and then normalization between Armenia and Turkey.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.